In laboratories around the world right now, scientists are not just mixing chemicals, they are mixing species like it's no big deal, and it's not a Netflix series. This is real, funded, and already happening. They call it progress and say it's all for medicine, for research, for the greater good. But what are they actually creating? Well, creatures that shouldn't exist. Some look like animals. Some act a little too human. And we haven't even figured out what to call them yet, let alone how to control them. These aren't just experiments. They're warnings wrapped in flesh. So join us for today's video as we count down 15 human-made beasts that are more dangerous than you think. Number 15. The rabbit man grown in a dish. It's a long story. Back in 2003, a team of some genius scientists in Shanghai quietly crossed a line most people didn't know existed. They took human DNA and inserted it into rabbit eggs, not for a film, not for theory, but for real. The result was totally remarkable. A short-lived organism made up of mostly human cells, growing inside something that began its life as a rabbit. They let it develop for a few days, just long enough to see what they'd created, and then they destroyed it. No photos, no evidence left but stem cells. This wasn't an isolated stunt. American labs had been chasing the same outcome, but the Chinese scientists beat them to it. They weren't just mixing genes, they were rewriting what counts as human. The creature was never meant to survive, only to grow just enough to serve a purpose. But for a moment, a new kind of being existed in a dish, not rabbit, not human, just something we weren't ready to meet. Number 14. The mouse with a human brain. Well guys, not every horror begins with claws or fangs. In this case, it began with a mouse and human brain cells. Researchers at the University of Rochester implanted glial cells from human fetuses into mice just to see what would happen. They didn't expect what came next. The mice began outperforming their peers in intelligence tests, faster learning, better memory, stronger problem solving. Well, of course, they were still mice, but they behaved like something else. The human glial cells didn't just integrate, they took over, replacing the mouse versions entirely. What does it mean to give a mouse a partially human brain? Now that's a $64 question we are still pretending not to ask. These weren't just upgraded rodents, they were something new. Animals with foreign minds, shaped by human tissue, navigating mazes with abnormal clarity. They didn't walk upright or start quoting Shakespeare, but they weren't really just animals anymore either. And yet they kept them in cages, called them subjects, and moved on to the next trial. Number 13. Mice with human anal sphincters. In 2011, a group of researchers decided to take on a medical problem no one likes to talk about: anal incontinence. The solution? Grow human sphincters in a lab and stitch them onto mice, not replicas, not synthetic models. Fully bioengineered human sphincters with nerves, muscles, and the ability to contract and release like the real thing. The scientists used human cells to grow the tissue, then grafted the sphincters onto the backs of lab mice. What surprised them wasn't that it worked, but how seamlessly the new muscles integrated. The tissue developed its own blood supply, connected to the animal's nervous system, and began functioning on command. This wasn't a vanity project. For people who've lost control over their bowels, it was the early stage of something transformative, but that doesn't make it less unsettling. Mice with partial human anatomy stitched onto their backs, functioning in real time, useful, yes, but undeniably strange. Medicine keeps moving forward, even when it looks absurd. Well, humans are pretty crazy. Number 12. Pigs with half-human blood. In Minnesota, a team at the Mayo Clinic decided to see what would happen if you put human stem cells into pig embryos. Not metaphorically, like really in reality. They created pigs that looked normal on the outside but had blood coursing through them that was neither fully pig nor human. What they discovered inside these animals wasn't just fusion, it was something new. Some cells stayed loyal to their species, but others merged, creating hybrid DNA combinations that had never existed before. The resulting pigs were biological chimeras, carrying inside them a strange new type of blood no textbook had ever described. This wasn't about curiosity, it was framed as a step toward future organ farming, where animals could grow human-compatible organs. But what they actually made were creatures that couldn't be categorized. They blurred the lines between species with a syringe and a petri dish, and no one's fully sure what they're capable of. Whatever it is, it's already flowing in half-human veins. What do you think about it? Number 11. Goats and cows that lactate human milk. We think we've talked about cows in earlier videos, but there are also goats that can do that. In 2009, scientists in Russia and Belarus decided to change what milk means. They genetically engineered goats to produce milk infused with human proteins, specifically lysozyme and lactoferrin, both found in human breast milk. Not long after, China followed with a herd of 300 cows, all tweaked to excrete something eerily close to what a human mother would produce. Their goal wasn't subtle. They wanted to industrialize human milk, to sell it on grocery shelves alongside almonds and oats. Some even envisioned cheese. Yes, cheese is made from humanized cow milk. The Russian team claimed it was delicious. The Chinese group announced plans for a mass-market rollout by 2014. Public reception, as you might guess, wasn't enthusiastic. The concept of pouring a glass of mutant cow milk for your toddler didn't exactly take off. But the tech is still alive. The animals still exist and the goal remains unchanged. Make the unnatural feel natural. Number 10. Mice with human livers. At the Salk Institute in 2010, researchers didn't just modify mice, they rewired them from the inside out. They created mice with nearly complete human livers. Once the organs matured, they didn't pause to admire their creation. They infected the mice with every disease they could think of. Hepatitis B, hepatitis C, malaria. Things that typically don't touch mice at all. Why go that far? Testing these diseases on humans or chimpanzees has always been controversial. Creating a mutant rodent skipped that ethical bottleneck, or so they hoped. With a liver behaving like a human organ, they could now simulate the impact of viruses and drugs in a new host, one they could control and discard without bureaucratic delays. Of course, this didn't resolve the ethics. Some argued it was still inhumane. Others questioned the scientific integrity of a model that was neither fully mouse nor human. But no one stopped them. The research went on, and those mice infected and studied quietly pushed medical science forward. Number 9. Pigs and sheep with human organs. In a quiet lab funded by the US military, scientists are designing something that sounds more like a concept sketch from a dystopian novel: animals grown for parts. Not food, not research, but hearts, livers, and lungs. Hiromitsu Nakochi, one of the leading names in this field, had to leave Japan because his work was banned there. In the US, he got a $1.4 million grant and a green light. In 2017, his team created 186 pig-human hybrid embryos. None lived long. Every organism was terminated before it hit 28 days. That's the international agreement for now. Even so, each generation is more refined. They're also working on sheep, which have organs more comparable to humans in size. So far, the most human animal they've created has had only 0.01% human DNA, just enough to make headlines, not organs. But Nakochi insists it's all moving forward. Slowly, yes, but deliberately. And if his team succeeds, we'll be facing a world where organ farms are living, breathing animals. All right, guys, now let's head over to number 8, Savannah cat. Savannah cats didn't happen by accident. They're deliberate hybrids born from pairing domestic cats with African servals. The result is an animal that looks more suited to the plains of Kenya than someone's living room. Long-legged, lean, and covered in bold spots, they carry themselves like they know they don't quite belong in suburbia. Depending on how much serval DNA they carry, their size and temperament can vary widely. Some grow twice the size of a standard house cat, with behavior that's far more alert, cautious, and demanding. They can jump high, open doors, and solve problems most cats would never think to attempt. For the right person, they're intensely loyal and even affectionate, but they're not your average lab cat. These hybrids require space, stimulation, and real commitment. They're legal in some places, restricted in others, and often misunderstood by the general public. Not quite wild, not quite tame, they live in that uneasy space in between. Number 7. Beefalo. The beefalo wasn't created for curiosity or conservation, it was engineered for efficiency. In the 1970s, U.S. ranchers wanted an animal that combined the rugged hardiness of the American bison with the controllable temperament and meat quality of domestic cattle. After years of selective breeding, they settled on a hybrid that was 3/8 bison and 5/8 cattle. This specific ratio gave them what they were after, a larger, leaner animal that could survive tough grazing conditions while producing beef with lower fat and cholesterol levels. The beefalo was officially recognized by the USDA and promoted as the next step in meat production. Despite its practical advantages, the breed never fully broke into the mainstream. Some traditionalists distrusted the idea of mixing wild blood into livestock. Others struggled with breeding consistency. But for niche ranches across North America, beefalo represent a middle ground between history and innovation, an animal designed not by nature but by market logic and genetic strategy. Number 6. Glow-in-the-dark cat. In a South Korean lab, a domestic cat was genetically modified to glow in the dark. This wasn't a stunt for attention. It was a biomedical trial meant to test how gene editing might treat human diseases. Researchers inserted a fluorescent protein found in jellyfish into the cat's DNA, and the result was a feline that lit up under UV light. At the cellular level, this glow meant success. Scientists could track how specific genes behaved, identify mutations, and simulate treatments in a living organism. Cats were chosen because of their genetic similarity to humans in some disease pathways, especially related to neurological and viral conditions. To the public, though, it looked more like novelty than science. Photos of glowing kittens spread quickly, drawing a mix of fascination and criticism. But beneath the spectacle was something more serious: the ability to watch genes activate in real time. A living neon marker in the fight against incurable conditions. Number 5. Yakko. The yakko was created for high-altitude work. When farmers in Central Asia needed livestock that could tolerate freezing winds, thin air, and steep slopes, they turned to hybridization. They crossed yaks adapted to rugged mountain climates with domestic cattle, hoping to produce something hardy but more productive. Yakkos are not new. They've existed for generations across the Himalayan region, bred quietly without much fanfare. They tend to be stronger than cattle, better suited to extreme environments, and more docile than wild yaks. In many communities, they provide both meat and labor, pulling loads up narrow trails where no machine could follow. Unlike many lab-driven hybrids, yakkos came from practical needs. They weren't made in research facilities or designed for commercial novelty. They were shaped by survival and geography. They thrive where most animals can't, and though they rarely make headlines, they've long been part of human life at the roof of the world, quiet, essential, and built for the terrain. Number 4. Zubron. Zubrons were never designed for spectacle. They were born from necessity. In post-war Poland, scientists crossbred domestic cattle with European bison to produce an animal that could endure harsh climates, resist disease, and graze with minimal care. The result wasn't glamorous, but it was effective: a heavy, strong hybrid with the endurance of its wild parent and the productivity of its domesticated side. The name Zubron was chosen through a public contest. For a time, they were considered a possible replacement for traditional cattle herds. They ate less, got sick less, and required less supervision. In theory, they were ideal for a recovering economy and a country with sprawling natural pastures. Despite their potential, Zubrons never went mainstream. Political shifts, logistical hurdles, and economic pressures pushed the program into obscurity. A few herds remain today in protected reserves, mostly watched out of curiosity. Not quite wild, no longer industrial, they exist as reminders of a time when hybrid science aimed to rebuild, not just experiment. Number 3. Chema. On paper, a camel-llama hybrid sounds unlikely. And in practice, it is. Camas doesn't happen naturally. They're the result of artificial insemination, and even then, success rates are low. The two species don't just come from different continents, they're separated by size, biology, and centuries of distinct evolution. But that didn't stop breeders from trying. The idea was to create a hybrid strong enough to carry loads in desert conditions, yet calm and cooperative like a llama. The camel offered endurance and strength. The llama brought softer wool, smaller stature, and easier handling. The resulting cama doesn't have a hump. It's woolly like a llama but noticeably larger, with a build somewhere between sturdy and awkward. They're rare not because they're unwanted, but because the pairing is difficult to reproduce reliably. Scientists still debate whether the experiment succeeded in any real commercial sense. For now, the cama remains an odd footnote in the growing list of hybrids humans have stitched together with ambition and science. Number 2. Liger. There's something strange about seeing a liger up close. It looks like a lion that's been exaggerated. Bulkier, broader, oversized in every direction. That's because it is ligers, bred from male lions and female tigers, don't follow the typical size logic of hybrids. They don't shrink. They grow beyond both parents, with some reaching over 1,000 pounds. One specimen even crossed 1,600. They're not mythological creatures, though you wouldn't guess that by their size. They're biological accidents impossible in the wild, because lions and tigers live continents apart. Only human intervention brought them together, usually in zoos or private facilities. They inherit a lion's sociability and a tiger's affinity for water. Their stripes are faint, like ghosts barely clinging to their fur. Despite their popularity online, ligers face serious health issues. Many suffer from joint problems and shortened lifespans. But they keep being bred for curiosity, for money, for spectacle. They weren't meant to exist, but that hasn't stopped anyone from making more. Number 1. The human-chimpanzee hybrid. In 1967, two Chinese researchers claimed they came disturbingly close to creating something that shouldn't exist. Deep inside a lab in Shenyang, they impregnated a female chimpanzee with human sperm. Their ambition wasn't just to see if it could be done. They wanted to make a more intelligent chimpanzee, one that could speak, obey commands, even herd livestock. The plan was never humane. If the hybrid had been born, it would have been treated more like property than life. They wanted it to work, to serve, maybe even fly off to space as a disposable test subject. But the experiment never made it to birth. During the Cultural Revolution, their lab was ransacked, the chimpanzee died pregnant, and all evidence was erased, except for the memory of the researchers who say she was already 3 months along. They tried again in the 1980s, but this time, ethics had caught up. The hybrid never returned, but the idea never really left. Well, we really wish you enjoyed watching this video. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe for more content like this. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next one.